Welcome to the ChangeMaker Collective podcast. I'm your host, Lee Mitchell, and each week we sit down with entrepreneurs, advocates, and industry disruptors who are reimagining what's possible in business, leadership, and community. Whether you're building something new, championing equity, or navigating your next career leap, this space is for you to learn, get inspired, and take empowered steps forward to drive meaningful change in your world. In this conversation, we're joined by Julie Savard-Shaw, Executive Director of the Prosperity Project, to explore the Rosie Mentorship Program and how it's transforming the lives of mid-career women across Canada. We unpack the unique challenges women face on the path to leadership, the importance of workplace flexibility, and why mentorship can be just as life-changing for mentors as it is for mentees. If you care about gender equity, inclusive leadership, and building a better future for the next generation, this episode is for you. Let's get started.
I'm Julie Savard-Shaw. I'm the Executive Director of the Prosperity Project. The Prosperity Project is a pan-Canadian charity that works to really identify and eliminate the barriers that stand in the way of women's economic prosperity. We take the word prosperity from a really sort of wide understanding that can range from, financial prosperity. It could be prosperity in the workforce, so sort of advancing to positions of leadership. But it could also mean, having access to childcare and enabling women to return to work or to access the workforce. So I've been with the Prosperity Project for 2.5 years. And prior to that, have been a long-standing advocate for gender equity, both in Canada and internationally. And it's my passion and what gets me out of bed every day.
Yes, I can completely relate to that passion, that need to have the impact. And I know that you work so hard alongside with your team to really bring these issues into light. And I'm also very honored to have gotten involved in the Prosperity Project as both a mentor and a visionary. And it has been such an honor and privilege to do that. And so I thought maybe what we could do is start by talking about the Rosie Mentorship Program and how this is helping to address gender equity in Canada through mentorship and, of course, the advocacy that you are so passionate about. So tell us a little bit about that program. I can certainly tell you my personal experience of being a mentor in the program, because it has been extremely rewarding. But I'd like to hear from your point of view, why this program and what do participants and mentors get from it?
And I'd love to hear your experience in the program as well. So, maybe I'll start with a personal anecdote. And that is when I left politics before joining the Prosperity Project as executive director, I wasn't at the very beginning of my career, but I wasn't at the senior executive level either. And so, I was sort of in this space where I was looking for mentorship and guidance, and the programs that were free were targeted to women that were either leaving university or really sort of starting their careers. And then the other programs I felt were really targeted to recruiting women to sit on corporate boards or really like more senior executive women. And the price range for that was totally outside of what I could afford at the time. And I actually came across the Prosperity Project's Rosie Mentorship Program. And what I was attracted to it for was that it is a free mentorship program. It's 6 months. It's completely bilingual, but it's really targeting women that are in the pipeline to leadership. So women that are already in their career, we ask women to have a minimum of 5 years of experience in their professional career to join the mentorship program as a mentee. And it pairs them with mentors that are really focused on helping them develop those leadership skills. So it's not necessarily a mentorship program that is focused on, developing skills in the STEM sector or developing skills in the IT sector or what have you. It's not sector specific. It's really focused on developing leadership skills. And that's what we offer at the Prosperity Project. So as I mentioned, it's a 6-month free mentorship program for women that is entirely virtual as well. So it makes it much more accessible for women, whether, you are caring for elderly parents, children, what have you, you're in a remote community. It really makes it so that anyone can have access to mentorship. And we have seen, I can tell you, a huge increase in the demand for mentees. When I joined about 2.5 years ago, there were maybe 50, 70 applicants per cohort, and we have 3 cohorts a year. We are now at over 200 applicants per cohort. Unfortunately, we can only match approximately 100 per cohort right now because we don't have enough mentors. So call out to your listeners that if you have more than 8 years of professional experience, we would welcome you and would love to have you as a mentor. The other thing that stands out with the Rosie Mentorship Program, and I think it's because of the fact that it's free and virtual, is that 77% of the mentees they self-identify as belonging to an underrepresented group. So that really tells us that there's a huge gap out there in Canada in terms of the mentorship programs that are accessible to groups that have typically been marginalized. So I'm talking here about, women with different identities, Indigenous women, women with disabilities, also single mothers. And I really think that our program just enables these women to get the mentorship and the guidance that they need to take that next step, whether that's, developing the skills or the confidence to ask for a raise, whether it's seeking help or just, bouncing ideas on I want to change the trajectory of my career. I've been in education and I want to go here or what have you. And the results that we're seeing are really remarkable. 95% of our mentees report that they would both recommend the program to someone else, but they also report having achieved the goal that they set out to achieve at the beginning of their mentorship journey. So it's having a direct impact, it's accessible, and it's free.
Yeah, it's really meaningful the way you've set it up. I've actually developed, we don't run it now, but we developed a mentorship program years ago for Women in Biz Network. And, we always could never keep up with the demand. And so, it's amazing the careers. This was more of an entrepreneurship based mentorship program. And so it really launched some incredible businesses, and we were really proud of what we were able to accomplish through that program. And so I know the challenges of building something like that. So kudos to you and the team for putting together such a well-run program. I utilized the resources when I did my training to, all of the resources that mentors get, because, sometimes we may not have a formal coaching background, and certainly that's not really the point. It's like you said, the 8 years of experience, but still, some people might question, oh, should I do this? Am I good enough to do this? And we certainly provide a lot of resources up front to help get the mentor ready to take that on, which is great. And I personally have had such a great experience working with my mentee, and so Nicole Volk. So she's just done an incredible, some exciting announcements coming with the work that I've done with her. I don't know if I can publicly say them now, so I'll maybe keep that as an exciting aside when we publish this podcast. But you also have a neat program where you can elect to, I'm trying to think of the right word. It is an award, I guess you could say, yes, yeah, for mentees. So you can elect to recognize your mentee, which I'm fully planning on doing because, the work that we've done together has been impactful for me. I think that it's helped me gain leadership skills and listening skills, and to come up with a framework that can be, supportive to what Nicole's needs have been, and as they evolve, and they did evolve throughout our process, she sort of changed course in some of the things that she needed to do. And so we really focused on those new goals that emerged throughout our time together. And I actually got to meet her in person.
Wonderful.
So we had the ChangeMaker Collective hosted a Connect and Reset Leadership Day. And so I invited Nicole to meet. So that was really rewarding to actually meet her in person. I happened to be in the same city or the GTA as she is. So we were able to have her come and be a part of that event. And it was really neat to actually get to meet her in person after having so many impactful conversations together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we hear that often from our mentors and mentees that, even if they're not in the same city, if one of them travels to the other city, they'll try and meet up because they've created such a strong bond. And you actually touched on two things that I completely sort of didn't address myself. But yes, we do offer resources. So what you said is absolutely true. I can't count the number of times that people have told me, well, I wouldn't be a good mentor. I don't know how to mentor. I've never done it. And so when someone signs up, as you will have seen, we offer resources, but we're also in the process of developing workshops that we plan on offering more regularly. And that is the How to Be a Great Mentor workshop, because we know that people are nervous to sign up as a mentor if they've never done it themselves before. And the other piece that you touched on that I think we don't talk enough about as society is the benefits to the mentors of entering into a mentorship relationship. We often see mentees talk about the benefits to them, but signing up as a mentor is just as rewarding. And in fact, from a corporate perspective, we try to articulate this often to some of our partners. Like, it's a great way to have your employees engage and develop some of the skills that are really beneficial for any worker to have. You mentioned listening skills and sort of ability to pivot and all that. So yeah, thank you for raising that.
Oh no, it's great that we're talking about it, because unfortunately some people, they don't give themselves enough credit for their transferable skills. And so this is something that I think that is important to address, that, it's not like, you get matched with a mentee and then good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a lot of support behind the scenes, but yet it's not too time consuming. It's very doable, but you do feel supported. And so I love the way that you run the program. In 6 months, you can accomplish a lot in 6 months. And, I'm pretty much up to my 6 months with Nicole, and I know that we will continue to stay in touch, maybe a little more informally. I might go on to mentor someone else through the program, which I'd be more than happy to do. But these relationships tend to become more than just a mentee-mentor relationship. So and I'm excited to attend your gala and meet a lot of the amazing people through like the visionaries, your executive team, and as well as probably my fellow mentees and mentors. So you focus on early and mid-career women, which I think is great. And I really do believe what you're saying, that it's really important that we give mid-level people that are in careers opportunities for that coaching, that support, that mentorship, because oftentimes it's the pipeline that we're really missing to get those executive leaders that get all the resources and the support that mid-level don't get. So what barriers do you think that they're specifically facing?
Yeah, that's part of our research. We've been looking into that since the Prosperity Project started. Some of the barriers include, unfortunately, there is still ongoing bias towards, a woman is in her childbearing years. And so, should I really be promoting her when she's going to be taking mat leave, or, she's going to have to do pickup every day at 4. So is she really the best person for this role? And unfortunately, that kind of thinking still exists. So promotion, what we call promotion bias, because we're talking about the mid-level management, right? There's also, ongoing pay gap. There's a lot of discrepancy still in terms of the pay. The exact same level, different genders will make different pay. And in fact, not just gender, but different identity. Like a Black woman may make less than a white woman, or certainly a Black woman would make much less than a white man in certain industries and certain companies. And I think just overall, what we're hearing is that women are just feeling burnt out and not valued, right? So it's more than just the pay gap, and it's more than just the bias. It's being overlooked for, professional development opportunities. It's being overlooked for specific or special assignments. I think it's really about changing the culture of an organization rather than having like a piecemeal approach of like, okay, let's address, the bias here and let's address the pay gap here. It's like it really needs to be done as a whole, and looking at how you really can retain the women that are in your pipeline to leadership so that they can move up and feel valued. And that's also what this is a term that's been coined, not by us, and I can't remember by who exactly, but the leaky pipeline, right? We're seeing a decline in the pipeline of women to leadership. And it is because they just don't want to raise their hands to move up the leadership ladder. At this point, many of them are telling us, well, it's not worth it. It's not worth my stress. It's not worth my sacrificing my health. And so those are some of the barriers that we work on directly with some of our corporate partners. And then there's also everything related to childcare, of course. So, childcare in Canada is still unaffordable for many people. Many people still don't even have access to childcare because it's in such high demand. So the Prosperity Project has been actively involved in advocacy around the National Childcare Strategy. And in fact, some of our founding visionaries were instrumental in making sure that, I believe it was Budget 2021 announced billions of dollars towards childcare. But we've really carried on that advocacy to make sure that the funding actually turns into spots being available for women, right? And so, at a high level, those are sort of the barriers that women in the pipeline to leadership face, and what the Prosperity Project is doing to try and address those.
Yeah, I think those are some really critical pieces that you've identified, specifically that gap of the women that are not sure they want to make the sacrifice and take leadership roles. So, the fact that, you really do have that full 360 support because you're working with the decision makers, you're doing the advocacy, you have the programs that can support. And I love that you're also supporting the childcare issue. I know from me personally, I'm in my 50s now, and I left a corporate, well, not corporate specifically, but I had a job in government marketing, great job, great benefits, but I had an issue with being able to obtain high quality, reliable daycare.
Yeah.
So I ended up leaving and starting my business, and, a lot of the advocacy that we did through Women in Biz Network had to do with my personal story and others around me who I saw that were, it had to leave, not necessarily by choice, but because they had no options. And I really definitely felt that way because my husband was traveling around the world and there was no options for me at that time. So I'm glad that we really focused on both of those topics because I think that there's still huge barriers. So it just, since we're talking about gender equity and, Gender Equity Week is upon us,
yes.
Yeah, what are you doing specifically in that? I know that there were some really interesting call to actions posted this week on social to participate in a survey and whatnot. So do you want to tell me a bit more about what you're doing for Gender Equity Week?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start by giving you and your listeners the dates. So Gender Equality Week is September 22nd to 25th. It was legislated in 2017. And basically it's a week to both celebrate the, all of the movement and the advances that have been done, but also to take a moment and pause and recognize that there's still a lot of work that's left to be done. So the Prosperity Project will be in Ottawa that week. We will be doing some advocacy. My colleague, not me, I want to make it clear because I have a lobbying ban. She will be doing lobbying for TPP. Because, as you mentioned, the consultation, so the federal government budget this year is coming out in October, and so the government is currently doing what we call pre-budget consultations. So what we shared on social media was that Canadians, anyone, can go on that website and share with the government what they want them to invest in. And so, there were various options, sort of infrastructure, healthcare, whatnot. But there was also the option to share that any investment really should have a gender lens, and that women and gender should be a critical lens that is part of all the investments and all the decisions that are being taken. So thank you for doing that. And so, yes, we'll be in Ottawa meeting with decision makers, and we're also hosting a cocktail reception at the Metropolitan Grill. So if any of your listeners are in Ottawa, that is on Tuesday, September 23rd from 5 to 8. Join us. It'll be a great way to network and meet with decision makers, other, change makers in the sector of gender equality. And one of our colleagues, Sherry Grayson, who is the executive director of Informed Perspective, will be sharing some spoken words. And she's amazing. So not to be missed. And just generally, at a high level, we're really doing that because we feel that there's been a little bit of a step back from focusing on women and on gender equality. Of course, given everything that's happening with the United States and in the world, there has to be a focus on the economy and on geopolitics. But we believe that investing in women, in the workforce that is women, we represent 50% of the population, is critical to having a strong economy. And so we just want to remind people in Ottawa, the decision makers, of that. And I'm hopeful that it'll be a really successful week.
I'm sure it will be. And speaking of events, you also have the gala in November. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we are hosting, so it's a gala-ish. It's more of a cocktail reception this year. Last year we had hosted a gala, and in fact, the feedback was that people at companies don't want to sit with the people they work with every day. Like they see them. And so they really wanted the focus to be on networking. And so that's what we're doing. We're not having a sit down dinner. It's going to be cocktail style, food stations. No one will leave being hungry, but the focus really is on meeting new people, other change makers, as you said, mentors and mentees of the program, some of our founding visionaries that, in my opinion, are just incredibly inspiring. And so the opportunity to meet some of them, as well as hopefully some decision makers. So last year we had the Honorable Anita Anand, who's now the Minister of Foreign Affairs, join us. And so I can't share yet who's going to be there this year, but I'm sure everyone will be happy. And it's one of the key fundraising events for the Prosperity Project. So as a charity, anyone who buys a ticket, a portion of that ticket, you can get a charitable tax receipt. And the funding directly goes to enabling us to carry out our programs, namely what we talked about, the mentorship program. One of my priorities is ensuring that we can keep offering this mentorship program for free. But as everyone knows, and particularly those in the charitable sector, it's been a difficult year. And so, fundraising events like this one are really critical for our success.
Absolutely. So it sounds like a great opportunity to get to know some change makers, but also make a huge impact and make a difference so that we can keep the Rosie project, the Rosie Mentorship Program in full swing. So that's great. So if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing to accelerate gender equity and equality in Canada, what would it be?
I saw that question when you sent it.
Yeah.
And I think it would be for the education system to have or integrate a much larger component around gender equality and the role that boys and men play in it. And, because you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Like, it's hard, and I get it. Like, change is not going to happen overnight. But I think that we're not doing enough to educate or develop the skills that are necessary for gender equality to prevail with our younger generation. And we're seeing it, right? The rise of populism and, some of the views that are coming out of Trump supporters. If we keep going as we are, those types of views and rhetoric will just keep happening. And so, I guess if I had a magic wand, that's what I would do. I would try and nip it in the butt, as you will.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's when we teach this in school and about healthy communication, respect amongst genders and some of the inequalities, I have two boys, and it's conversations that we've had with them since they were quite young, and, just teaching them about being equal partners in relationships and all of that as well. It trickles down. It trickles down in all parts of our life. If we're teaching that, only the women are responsible for, figuring out daycare and, the extra responsibilities in domestic work, then, it's sending that message. So the more that we can, educate through the school system, the better I think the outcomes will be, because we will be raising future generations to know that, this should be the standard. And then hopefully, in their lifetime, we'll see some parity.
Yes, exactly.
So
that's exactly
it. I think it chose a really good topic for the magic wand question.
It won't be immediate, right?
Well,
but
certainly not.
Yeah.
But the more we put it out there, and hopefully there are teachers and educators who listen to the podcast and can think about how they can bring that into their classroom lessons. So as we're wrapping things up, and it's been a great conversation, how do you balance you as a leader? We talk a lot about the importance of mental health and about flexibility and providing workplaces that women can flourish in. So, what are some practices that you have in your life that you're helping to spread throughout your organization in terms of mental health, flexibility? Tell me a little bit about your own practices and what you encourage your team to do, just as we wrap.
I'll start by saying that I recognize that I am far from perfect. I have a lot of work to do in terms of being more balanced at balancing work and sort of work and sort of life. My most of my professional career has been in politics, where there's that division doesn't really exist, and so I'm working really hard at that. And thankfully, I have a great team that enables me to disconnect when I need to disconnect. But a few things come to mind. The Prosperity Project is an entirely virtual organization, and there's a lot of talk out there right now about the return to the office. And, that is something that employers should not take lightly. We are seeing the data. Virtual work has been beneficial for different groups, including women, including people with disabilities, including people like Black people, Indigenous people, because they don't have to face all those microaggression that they would normally face. Mm-hmm. And look, I get it. Like, there are so many benefits to being in an office or in person. What I would encourage employers to do, though, is to be really intentional, because I'm hearing reports of like teams having to go in the office a minimum of 4 days a week, but no one's communicating when they're going to be in. So there's a day that like one person shows up and everyone else is at home. And so that person is in the office, but ends up taking all their meetings on Zoom. And it's like that entirely defeats the purpose, right? And so I think the whole issue of virtual is something that employers need to think of. And at the Prosperity Project, like, we do virtual, like we are a virtual organization. And I think that has meant that people who work here have much more flexibility in terms of how they manage their time. And that's another thing. Like I always tell the team, you know, I hope the board doesn't hear this, and but I don't care what hours you work, you know, as long as you get the work done. If you have an appointment in the middle of the day, you know, take it. That's not a problem. And being virtual allows for that, right? It means that some of our team members, a lot of us are mothers, you know, there's camp pickup in the, you know, school ends at 3. So they'll go pick up their kids, they'll come back and finish the day. Or, you know, elderly parents, you know, generation squeeze right now, a lot of millennials having to do both. So there's that. In terms of mental health, this summer, you know, we implemented a If You Must Work Friday. So really trying to encourage the team to take additional time off if they can. So not booking meetings, things like that. You know, again, a whole conversation about 4 days a week. I think I saw over the weekend that Norway enacted a law where 40 hours a week is no longer legal. So, you know, I think as a society, we need to rethink all of that. And then just generally, I think it's communication is so key, right? And I work really hard to not make any subject or the subject of like mental health taboo. Like I share often with the team when I'm struggling so that they too can feel like they can. And I think more leaders need to do that so that, yeah, it's not seen as being less ambitious or less skilled or less, but rather, you know, just needing that extra support. And I think it starts with leaders being able to recognize when they themselves are having challenges. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that is so critical to hear, because, you know, it's important that as advocates that we're walking the talk and not just, you know, we're doing what we are advocating for in our own companies that we're running. And it sounds like there's some great initiatives that you're creating. And I think that it's important because, as you said, you know, with this 5 days a week for the Ontario government starting in January, you know, how do you, like you said, how do you fit in health appointments? You know, is that going to mean that, you know, you're not going to be staying on top of those critical appointments for health that women need to be on top of, because we tend to put ourselves last. And I'm really trying to change that paradigm. And, you know, also things like menopause too, right? That's where I'm at in my stage of life. So, you know, making all of those topics very outward facing, that there's no taboo around them, I think is really important. So I just want to thank you so much for everything that you're doing. You're definitely an inspiration to me. I'm so excited to meet you in person.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you so much for being on the podcast. Is there any final words that you want to share just before we part? And if anyone's interested in becoming a mentee or a mentor or anything else that you think is important in terms of just communicating the essential facts, please feel free to finalize with those final words.
No, thank you for having me on the podcast. It was a great conversation, and I look forward to seeing you in November as well. If folks want to sign up as mentors or see our research or just learn more about the Prosperity Project, they can visit us at Canadian Prosperity Project. And you can also find us on most of the social media apps. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. And we'd love to have you join our community. And if anyone has questions, they can always reach out to me directly.